The sun dipped below the horizon. The city lights flickered to life, casting an orange glow against the approaching darkness. A cool breeze swept through the streets, carrying with it the scent of rain and unease. Unbeknownst to the city dwellers, a night of unimaginable terror was about to begin. Hayden gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white in the fading light. Beside him sat his elderly father, his gaze lost in the city's maze of buildings. They were passing through, just another father and son on a road trip. A quick stop for gas, Hayden thought, then back on the open road. As Hayden finished filling the tank, a glint of light caught his eye. High above, something moved against the backdrop of the darkening sky. A tiny speck, almost invisible to the naked eye. He squinted, trying to make out its shape. "That's a weird-looking plane," Hayden muttered, mostly to himself. He pointed towards the object. "See, Dad?" His father, his eyesight failing, leaned forward, peering through the windshield. Strange," he agreed, his voice a low rumble. Hayden continued to stare, a prickle of unease crawling up his spine. The object, whatever it was, wasn't moving like any plane he'd ever seen. It hovered, almost motionless, then darted with impossible speed. A chill wind seemed to blow through the gas station, though the air was still. "Maybe it's one of those drones," his father suggested, his voice barely a whisper, "the ones they've been talking about on the news." Hayden had heard the reports too, strange, silent drones appearing in the skies all over the world. No one knew where they came from, or what they wanted, but no one had reported anything like this. Not yet. As if to confirm his unease, a second glint appeared in the sky. This one was closer, larger, and undeniably not a plane. It was a craft of some kind, sleek and angular, with no visible wings or engines. It hung in the air as if defying gravity itself. Suddenly, both crafts erupted in a dazzling display of light. Beams of intense, multicolored light shot out in all directions, crisscrossing the sky like a macabre fireworks show. The light was beautiful, mesmerizing, but there was something about it that made Hayden's skin crawl. It was too bright, too intense, too unlike anything he'd ever seen. The light show continued, growing in intensity, bathing the gas station in an eerie, otherworldly glow. For a moment, Hayden stood frozen, mesmerized by the spectacle unfolding above. It was like watching the birth of a star, terrifying and beautiful all at once. His father, equally transfixed, muttered something under his breath, a prayer perhaps, or maybe a curse. The spell was broken by a sickening crunch of metal against metal. The night had been eerily quiet until that moment, a silence that seemed to stretch on forever, only to be shattered in an instant. A car, its driver seemingly blinded by the lights or gripped by panic, slammed into one of the gas pumps. The vehicle, out of control, careened with a force that seemed almost unreal. as if driven by some unseen hand. The impact sent sparks flying and a collective gasp through the small crowd that had gathered. Faces turned pale, eyes wide with shock and disbelief as the reality of the situation began to sink in. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the air was filled with the screams of the injured and the terrified shouts of those fleeing the scene. The chaos was immediate and overwhelming, a stark contrast to the calm that had preceded it. People ran in all directions, some trying to help, others simply trying to escape the horror unfolding before them. Chaos erupted. Cars, their drivers desperate to escape the spectacle, collided with each other in a cacophony of horns and screeching tires. People scrambled out of their vehicles, some running for cover, others simply collapsing to the ground in terror. Hayden, jolted out of his stupor, grabbed his father's arm and pulled him towards their car. The once ordinary gas station had transformed into a scene from a nightmare. The air, thick with the smell of gasoline and fear, crackled with an almost tangible sense of dread. Around them, people were losing their minds, their faces contorted in terror, their screams swallowed by the growing pandemonium. A young mother, her eyes wide with panic, desperately clutched a wailing infant, her pleas for help lost in the din. And then the light show took a sinister turn. What was once a mesmerizing display of colors and patterns became something far more ominous. The air grew thick with tension, and an unsettling silence fell over the crowd. People began to sense that something was terribly wrong, but it was already too late. The once beautiful beams, now a malevolent red, sliced through the night with surgical precision. These beams, which had once brought joy and wonder, now brought only fear and death. They moved with an eerie intelligence as if guided by some unseen hand, targeting their victims with unerring accuracy. There was no sound, no explosion, just a silent, invisible force cutting through flesh and bone as easily as a hot knife through butter. The silence was deafening, amplifying the horror of the scene. It was as if the very air had turned against them, becoming a weapon of unimaginable lethality. Hayden watched in horror as a group of people, just moments ago running in terror, were suddenly silenced. Their screams were cut short, replaced by an eerie stillness. The terror in their eyes was frozen in time, a haunting reminder of the suddenness of their demise, their bodies falling to the ground in a grotesque tableau of death. The once lively and vibrant scene was now a macabre display of lifeless forms, each one a testament to the brutality of the unseen force. The ground was littered with the fallen, a chilling reminder of the fragility of life in the face of such overwhelming power. Section 3, Descent into Hell. The gas station, once a beacon of warmth and light, was now an abattoir, bathed in the eerie glow of the alien craft and the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. The smell of death, sharp and metallic, mingled with the stench of gasoline, creating a nauseating miasma that made Hayden's stomach churn. He had to get out of there. He had to get himself and his father to safety. Section 1. Crimson Rain. The lasers sliced through the night, painting the pavement crimson. Each beam found its mark with horrifying accuracy, leaving a trail of mangled bodies in its wake. Hayden, his heart pounding in his chest, pulled his father towards their car, their shoes slipping on the asphalt, slick with blood. They weren't beams of light, he realized. Not really. They were weapons instruments of death wielded by an unseen hand. Section 2. A Father's Plea. "Hayden, we have to go," his father rasped, his voice barely audible above the screams and the sickening symphony of carnage. Hayden hesitated, his gaze darting from the carnage around them to the relative safety of their car. He knew they couldn't stay here, not with death raining down from the sky. But where could they go? The world had become a slaughterhouse, and they were trapped inside. Section 1. Escape into the night. The city was a labyrinth of shadows and flickering lights, a place where danger lurked around every corner. The night was alive with the sounds of chaos, a symphony of sirens, shouts, and the distant rumble of explosions. It was a night that would be etched into the memories of those who survived, a night that would haunt their dreams forever. Adrenaline surged through Hayden's veins, a primal instinct for survival kicking in. His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum, each beat a reminder of the stakes. The fear in his eyes was mirrored in the faces of those around him, each person caught in their own desperate struggle to escape the nightmare that had descended upon the city. He tightened his grip on his father's arm, dragging him toward their car. The old man stumbled, his strength failing him, but Hayden's determination was unyielding. He couldn't afford to lose his father now, not when they were so close to getting away. The car was their only hope, a fragile sanctuary in a world gone mad. Every breath was a gasp, every heartbeat a drumbeat of terror against the symphony of chaos. The air was thick with smoke, and the acrid smell of burning rubber, each inhalation a painful reminder of the destruction that surrounded them. The sounds of the city were a cacophony of fear, a relentless assault on the senses. The world was a kaleidoscope of red and black, the air thick with the stench of gasoline and death. Flames licked at the edges of buildings, casting eerie shadows that danced in the night. The once familiar streets had become a hellscape, a twisted version of the city they had known. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been torn apart, leaving only chaos in its wake. Hayden could only think of escape, of outrunning the invisible hand that was painting the city red. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead, of the unknown dangers that awaited them, but he couldn't let fear paralyze him. He had to keep moving, had to keep fighting for their survival. The only way out was forward, into the darkness. Fumbling with the keys, he unlocked the car, shoving his father towards the passenger seat. His hands trembled with a mix of fear and urgency, each second feeling like an eternity. The car was their lifeline, the only thing standing between them and the chaos that threatened to consume them. He had to get them out of there, had to find a way to safety. The engine roared to life, a defiant growl against the silent massacre. The sound was a beacon of hope, a promise of escape. The dashboard lights flickered on, casting a dim glow inside the car. It was a small comfort, a reminder that they were still alive, still fighting. The headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. Wheels screeched, the car lurching forward into the night. The tires gripped the pavement, propelling them away from the chaos. The city blurred past them, a whirlwind of lights and shadows. Each turn, each acceleration was a step closer to freedom, a step further from the nightmare they were leaving behind. Hayden didn't dare look back. The screams of the dying a chilling soundtrack to their escape. His focus was on the road ahead, on the path that would lead them to safety. The rearview mirror reflected the chaos they were leaving behind, a stark reminder of the danger that still lurked. But he couldn't afford to dwell on it. He had to keep moving, had to keep driving. They were two souls fleeing into the darkness, praying for a dawn that might never come. The road stretched out before them, an endless ribbon of uncertainty. Each mile was a victory, each moment a testament to their will to survive. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they knew they had to keep going. The night was their enemy, but it was also their shield, hiding them from the horrors they had left behind. The night of terror had just begun. The city was a battlefield, and they were its refugees. The darkness was both a curse and a blessing, concealing them from their pursuers, but also hiding unknown dangers. They had escaped for now, but the journey was far from over. The night held many secrets, and they would have to face them all before they could find peace.